What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Bleach: The Thousand Year Blood War. This is episode 39 and 40. With me, as always, I have Bluespade.
Yeah, so this is, of course, the final two episodes of Core 3. But I still have to question, like, why it needed to have, like, a second episode while, that very last episode was only, like, 15 minutes long. I don't see why they couldn't have just merged these two episodes together as one, long extended, like, finale episode. It just didn't make sense to me.
Obviously, like, we knew before the episodes came out that there was going to be two episodes, but I also heard rumors it was going to be like a longer episode, but that's not really the case. It was just two like standard length episodes. And unfortunately, like Spade already pointed out, the last episode unfortunately suffers from the same problem that Core 2 did. Whereas it made more sense in Core 2 because of the production issues, but I'm not really sure why they did it this way here, where most of the, like, it's only kind of like half of an episode, and then like the last part of the episode is just like a comedy skit. Like in Core 2, it was the illustrated guide to Soul Reapers, and this one, it's it's Askin just kind of, it's just talking about like different stuff. Like he's, I guess going over some information some of it was actually kind of interesting, and I guess I would say somewhat important in a way, because he was talking about some of the Quincy's that were involved in the first assault on the Soul Society, and we didn't even know the names of some of these Quincy's, so I mean that was kind of interesting. But everything else was just kind of, it was just like comedy bits, and it wasn't really that relevant to the story or anything.
No, I mean it didn't really hype up what's going to be coming in the final Core, it did get announced.
I mean, I will say though, in comparison to Core 2, I do like the point this ends at better than where it ended in Core 2, because it felt like a really weird place to end it. But at the same time, it's just, obviously it's just really weird because we have like kind of like just half of an episode for the last episode. I'd rather this have just been like one longer episode and just cut out that like everything at the end, and just have like the whole episode basically just be like episode 39, and then just, I guess, 15 minutes of episode 40.
I guess, well, maybe that last bit with Askin, with that illustrated guide to Soul Reapers, or the Quincy's, whatever they're calling it. I think that would have been necessary but like I said, it would have been better if it was merged into one episode rather than just splitting into two episodes.
Or it could have just been like a special extra episode or something.
Probably.
Instead of just being inserted into an episode.
Yeah. I mean, overall, the finale together, it was still good. It's just like I still question as to why they split it into two episodes, while the last one only had like 15 minutes of content altogether.
Right. I mean, I thought it was good. I mean, the obviously, in my opinion, the best part of it was, the Ichigo and Uryu confrontation, as well as like the fight with Askin and Yoruichi. However, like, I don't know if you were like, I was kind of wondering this, but where is Grimjow at? Like, I mean, I'm guessing he was obviously defeated by Askin, but we don't see or hear anything about him.
Yeah.
Like after
I don't know. It's kind of an underwhelming return, in my opinion, for Grimjow to just come back.
It's really annoying, especially for people who are fans of Grimjow. Like, he comes back and then he gets defeated by Askin. He has some interaction with Ichigo, but then he gets defeated by Askin, and then we don't see him again.
And of course we see Nell come back as in her adult form, but she doesn't really do too much of anything.
I forgot about that too. Yeah, she shows up again, and I don't even know where. Yeah, I don't know what she's doing at this point. Because she's not involved. She came with them to the.
Yeah, she came with them, but she's not. She's nowhere. We didn't even see her with either. She wasn't with any of the the rest of the party. Like, even with
because we see like pretty much everybody else, but then like some characters. I guess that's somewhat of a complaint of mine. That like some characters like that we saw like just seem to have been just almost forgotten about.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure they'll probably show up at some point,
yeah,
but it's just kind of weird
yeah.
that like
We do get to see like Hitsugaya and Rangiku a little bit here and there, but they
yeah, but
uh,
they don't do anything. I mean, Rangiku obviously like yeah, she's there, but she doesn't really get a chance to do anything. She's basically just witnesses the battle with uh Valkyrie or
yeah,
whatever that guy's name is.
and then we also see Ishin and Ryukin in this episode, and they're planning on heading over to the Soul Society. But I think
Yeah, I guess they were visiting Masaki's grave, I think.
yeah,
Um,
and I think they said they're using some kind of old key to access like a gate that'll transport them to the Soul Society later. Which, of course,
yeah.
it doesn't get resolved in this episode, but it'll likely show them coming over to the Soul Society. Obviously on the fourth and final core.
Yeah. So like a lot of like at least a lot of I think episode 39 is like this confrontation with Renji's what was it Renji, Momo, and the Vizards, and also
Well,
yeah I think yeah Momo.
Speaking of Renji, he does rejoin like the Soul Reaper team. Just shortly after the
Yeah,
fight
well,
against Uryu, after he got it, he got a hole in his chest too.
yeah,
Uh,
of course, Uryu didn't really, he just left him there, which is why he's still alive. And I think that should be just a big hint that Uryu was not betraying, obviously, like he didn't switch sides or anything. And we pretty much have that confirmed in the last episode.
yeah. Um, but of course, Renji's team are confronted by, I guess you could say, one of the last four major Quincy guards for Yuhoba,
Yeah,
which is of course like this Thor-looking guy. I think his name is Gerald Valkyrie. That's
y-
what he calls himself.
yeah. Um, and I mean, we've seen him fight before, but we don't really, I guess we don't until this point, like see his true ability, which is basically apparently like if you hurt him enough, he grows in size.
Yeah, it's like I mean, Byakuya tries at least a couple times just to try to preemptively kill this guy, and he even like lands like somewhat of a killing blow for good measure. But to no one's surprise, like Gerald doesn't die from this, and he turns into like like a giant, like he's just a giant, at the end of it, and then
Mm.
of course like what was it, Shinji and the other Vizards step in and unleash their of course their masked visored forms to go up against Gerald. But that's pretty much where it ends off from that point until we get to see yeah.
Yeah, like we also see what's happening in the world of the living and also in Boyka Mundo with how the arm of the Soul King or whatever, like it's I guess it's now unstable and it's to the point where like it's barely I guess holding on, and I guess it eventually like, and that's why we're seeing all these earthquakes happening, or well like I guess supposedly earthquakes happening in the world of the living and Boyka Mundo.
Yeah, and we see Ukitaki's body just, he's just still in that trance with the what was it that Mimiyagi. I mean, whatever's happening. I mean, I can't even say for sure if he's even alive at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, well, speaking of people who I thought were dead, we actually see Kira show up again with. I mean, it's weird because when he died in the beginning of Thousand Year Blood War, it was weird that they just didn't really seem to acknowledge his death. I mean, because they don't really mention it much, so I just assumed he was dead, and then he shows up in this episode with the hole in his chest where he was I think blasted by Basby, and he's he manages to what was it
He's confronting like what was it that same Quincy that who did it? It's not Shunsui. It's Nanao who ends up defeating him with that that special Zanpakuto, but apparently he's still somehow he's still alive. I mean, apparently no one can die at this point.
Yeah. At first I thought it was Aizen, but it ends up being Akira, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how he's still alive, but yeah, he's apparently survived.
He's like the hole in his hit his abdomen, like it's being held together by whatever it is. I could assume Mayuri had a role to play with his recovery.
Yeah, most likely.
But yeah, so what else is going there? Oh yeah, one other thing is we do get to see Yoruichi in action again, facing off against Askin after. Well, Ichigo, I don't know what really happened.
Ichigo gets beaten off screen,
yeah,
by Askin, which was really weird. Like, cause he's just lying unconscious. Like when we go back to that.
Yeah, and not even Chad and Orihime could help him out. So that's of course when Yoruichi steps in and starts unleashing her. I guess you could say her new Shunko form, but then all of a sudden her brother just shows up. I think what's his name again? It's yeah.
I keep forgetting. Because I also don't like. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember her brother from the original series. Like I feel like he just shows up in the.
He made it like a very small appearance. I think his name is Yushiro. Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah.
I mean, surprisingly, he was able to hold his own for, I guess, the start of the fight against Askin before Askin starts adapting to that ability and shoots Yushiro in the back. And of course Yoruichi decides to step in to save her brother, and then of course I mean there's no resolution to the fight until we get to core 4.
So Ichigo and the others managed to escape as well. Like she's basically just like fighting him like so they can get away. They at first got hit with the reishi poisoning, where he basically and Askin explains his ability again with the maximum lethal dose or whatever it's called. But yeah, like they managed to get out of that, and Yoruichi's basically and I guess her brother is like fight him. Her brother at one point also got impaled by like Quincy arrows, so he's pretty fatally injured. So yeah, Yoruichi just is the only one facing off against him now, and it's weird because at one point like Askin compares her for some reason to Bambietta, because like I guess he thinks they're similar, but I don't really see how, because they seem just very different in terms of personality. But
yeah,
I guess that he said like they kind of like annoy him in the same way or something like that.
Yeah, but, I mean, well, speaking of Bambietta, we do get to see the zombified Bambis go up against Yuhaba while he's still asleep.
Well, but, I mean, we don't really even get to see it. Like, I mean, they go into his chamber and attack him, but then in the next scene, they've all been taken out. And apparently, I guess he's somehow able to defend himself in his sleep.
Yeah, I mean, they of course they realize too late that he's more powerful than ever before now that he's absorbing Miyagi, or the arm of the Soul King. But of course, like the main meat of the episode, of course, comes from when what was it? When Haschwalth accused Uryu of apparently of a future betrayal, because while Yuhaba is asleep, Haschwalth is able to gain access to Yuhaba's abilities. His like an all-seeing like eye ability, something like that.
Yeah, he basically gains the power of the Almighty. So I guess part of the reason why, at least part of the reason why Haschwalth is so suspicious of Uryu is because he saw Uryu's future betrayal. So he basically has Uryu try to prove himself by telling him he needs to kill his friends. So of course after that proceeds to be a fight between him and Ichigo again. But they managed to get I guess far enough away from Haschwalth to where Uryu then like kind of reveals, I guess, what his plan had been the whole time, and we get these new flashback sequences with Uryu's mother and what happened with the Ashwallen, and that I guess Uryu was affected by the Ashwallen, and we get some new lines from Soken Ishida where he basically says that Yuhaba is like the enemy of the Quincy's, and he must be stopped. He can't be trusted. So that was, I guess, the thing I guess that was part of what Uryu was reading up on. I suppose that I don't know that he wasn't really, because we were led to believe, I guess, that what he was reading in the flashbacks were things that like convinced him to join the Stern Ritter, but they were actually things that basically, I guess, told him that how big of a threat that Yuhaba is. So he would need to try to, I guess, that was why he needed to pretend like he was joining up with them or something, maybe.
Yeah. And he offers Ichigo and the others to escape back home while he deals with this by himself. But of course, in typical fashion, Ichigo berates him. This isn't the first time this has happened. Like with Ichigo, like berating his some of his friends or other people for taking issues on by themselves without asking for his help. So Ichigo, like, obviously he wants to help out. He wants it, to get this whole thing settled with Yuhaba. I don't know if Uryu even really knows that Ichigo is part Quincy.
I think he probably, if he doesn't, he at least suspects it, because we saw that he saw Ichigo's blood vein when they were fighting that one time.
Yeah.
So he probably has to know. But I mean, part of the reason why Uryu says that he couldn't tell Ichigo was because I guess part of the, it was because it had to do with his people, the Quincy's. But it would have been funny if, Ichigo had retorted that, he is also technically a Quincy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does involve him too. But yeah, so Uryu gives them this key to something called, like, what was it? The Sun Gate, that leads to back to the world of the living. And basically, I guess, tells them to get away and go back to the world of the living. But of course, before they can do anything, I think after that was when Ichigo just kind of like, like chews him out for not telling them anything. But then, of course, Hashwal is right there. Of course, he heard the whole thing, and that's when he revealed, like, he could see what was about to happen. But Uryu basically tells Ichigo that he needs to go and deal with Yuhaba because of he's more vulnerable now because he's asleep. So that's when Ichigo reluctantly, I guess, decides to leave Uryu to deal with Hashwalth, and they're proceeding to go to try to kill Yuhaba in his sleep, supposedly. But and then I guess now there's about to be a fight with Uryu and Hashwalth, but we don't see it happen. But Uryu points out that there's, I guess, somewhat of a flaw in Hashwalth's Almighty, and that he couldn't see everything, I guess, that was about to happen. Like there are some things he didn't know. Like I forget what he said. He was like surprised about something. What was it? Like he was surprised that, I guess, I don't know if it was that Uryu let him go or something that he didn't foresee. And Uryu points out that there's there's somewhat of a flaw in his in the Almighty. So yeah. I guess he's going to try to exploit that somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Overall, I'd say this was as a somewhat decent core than the last one. I do like the way this core ended at this point in comparison to the last, the finale from the last core, because like that ended off in a weird point, and for whatever reason, the first episode of this core, it felt more like that would have been a more proper finale for that core had they put that content in there, but for whatever reason they didn't. And the same issue is like why they decided to make this into 2 episodes, yet the final episode was only like half an episode for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just convinced this should have been a somewhat longer episode, with the 15 minutes from this episode just added on to the last one.
Yeah.
It would have made more sense than what they decided to do.
Yeah.
But with the last core, it made sense because of the production issues. But this time around, like they didn't really have that, so I really kind of feel like there's no excuse for the way that this episode was sort of like thrown together. Even though it was a good episode, like everything about it, like I didn't have a problem with the actual episode itself. It's just the way that they decided to add on this like extra comedy skit.
Yeah,
Um,
I
you know,
really I do feel like that this should have that these two episodes should have been one episode altogether, and I mean maybe put in that like that illustrated guide skit at the end there if they wanted to, but it didn't feel necessary for them to just make it two episodes like this.
yeah. But yeah, I thought this was a really good core. I actually thought it was somewhat better than core two actually. Um, it's just it had a lot more like just I thought the animation was definitely improved, even though it was really great in core two and even in the core one. I felt like it honestly looked even better here.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of really good fight scenes. We got to see some Bankai from some of the captains and lieutenants that we've never seen before, so that was pretty interesting. And I'm sure there was a lot of new scenes as well. Of course, I can't really say as someone who hasn't read the manga, but I think for the most part, for being like the final arc of Bleach, it's been playing out pretty. It's been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't really had a major issue with it, aside from just the fact that I feel like the main problem is just because Bleach has so many characters, it feels like that they have to have all the characters involved, which makes sense. But the problem with that is you're going to have to like cut out some characters or like sideline them because there's just not enough time. And I feel like as a result, we do get some characters that just don't really get to do much. Speaking of which, we forgot to mention, we do briefly get to like go back to Riruka. And I forget the other guy, but that one other guy, and they're just like waiting in that like what was it? That like elevator thing. And they eventually somehow end up like they somehow end up getting transported to the Shiba residence, and that's kind of where we end off with them. So I'm not exactly sure why they're there or how they got there, but I think they got there because like I guess that one guy somehow controls where they're going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not really sure what they're gonna do there. At the Shiba place. I mean it's kind of interesting because we haven't seen what was it, Kakushiba or that one woman?
Yeah.
She's only like kind of, we only briefly saw her, but we didn't really get to see much else of her. And also the other thing too is that she has Genjo Kubo and I think Tsukishima and like those people are with her too. So I'm wondering if maybe we'll see some of them. Since
we did briefly see them in core one, and
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they got involved, by the last core somehow in some way.
Yeah, maybe that's why they ended up there. Maybe they're, I guess, going to try to get that. That would be kind of weird to get, if Genjo Kubo got involved and even Tsukishima somehow got involved in this fight. But I guess that we've seen stuff like this happen before in the series where former enemies have become like allies in a way. Even technically Aizen is against his will, but is fighting with them at this point. So I don't know. It would just be kind of funny to see, if Tsukishima even like gets involved and it has some interaction with Ichigo. I'd really just kind of love to see how he reacts to that.
Mm-hmm.
Considering what Tsukishima did. But I mean, Aizen's arguably done much worse things. So, but yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the episode and the core overall, though. I thought it was, aside from some decisions, I guess, that were made with this last episode, I thought that for the most part, core 3 was really good and arguably like an improvement over core 2.
Yeah, I did like a lot. There were a lot more plot developments in terms of like Uryu's character development, his reasonings for joining Yuhaba in the first place, and his resolution of wanting to bring honor to the to the Quincy bloodline. And so yeah, I mean, it was a good core. I mean, the only negatives I have are the underwhelming returns of Grimmjow and Nell, who for whatever reason they got undercut after, during that fight against Askin. I mean, well, technically, no, she shows up, but we don't even really get to see them with the with in a with Orihime and Chad, when they came back. So it was weird. Where I have the question like what exactly happened to her. So, but yeah, overall, yeah, I am looking forward to the fourth and final core whenever that's coming out. They didn't really announce like an actual release date, unfortunately, but I could assume that it could be somewhere late in 2025 uh, or somewhere maybe early 2026. Who knows when that's going to come out?
Yeah, and apparently, according to people who've read the manga, like I guess at least half of the last core is going to actually be like anime original content, based on the amount of chapters that are being adapted.
Yeah, I think Kubo mentioned this in an interview. Just I think it was a few days ago. He did this interview, but yeah, it's just the amount of content left for Core 4. It's not that much, and it'll very likely have to, a lot of like much of it will have to be anime original stuff, which I'm hoping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping it should be because that finale, I read, uh, of the final chapter, it was very short, especially with the epilogue, which shows like what the characters are doing after the final battle. But it just really felt like there were a lot of pieces missing with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what most people have been really looking forward to with the score as well, is just seeing how Kubo corrects that in the anime version. Since he's not, it's not the same circumstances as with when he was doing the manga and he was kind of being rushed to basically just finish it. But yeah, guys, that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.